Right. Good evening, councillors, officers, members of the public that may be joining us by the webcast. I'd like to welcome you all to this evening's Employment Committee meeting here at Maidstone Town Hall, Thursday the 1st of February 2024. The usual bits of housekeeping, telephonic and digital devices to their most silent format, I would be grateful. No planned fire drills or practices, so if we hear such a thing, please consider it to be real and follow the instructions of the Democratic Services Officer who will guide us. As I mentioned, this evening's meeting is being recorded and will be available for playback on our YouTube channel. But I would like to inquire if anybody else wishes to record, and that's not to prevent you, but just so that others in the room would be aware. Nobody's indicating. I think I've remembered everything, but with that being the case, shall we crack on? May I take notices of apologies, please? Have we received apologies? Councillor Sams, I'm advised, has sent apologies. Councillor Cooper?
I have received apologies from Councillor Perry and Councillor Mrs. Parfitt-Reed.
Okay, we will record those. That allows us the opportunity to make substitutions. May I ask for notice of substitutions, please, Councillor Eagle?
Yeah, Councillor Eagle for Councillor Sands.
Thank you very much. No others. This evening there are no urgent items, and there does not appear to be any visiting members with us this evening. So at item 5, may I inquire, are there any disclosures by members or officers for this evening? Councillor Mrs. Cleater.
Yeah, Councillor Cleater, just to say that I am a member of Unison, but not of the branch that represents Maidstone Borough Council staff.
Okay, similar question at item 6. Has anybody been lobbied on any matters before us this evening? Shaking of heads, none will be recorded. That being the case, no yellow pages in front of us this evening, so I believe that we can do everything in open session. So can I ask you just to give your attention for a couple of moments, please, to the minutes of the last 2 meetings, and I'll start with the meeting held 30th of January 2023, circulated with the papers. Does anybody have any matters of accuracy they want to raise? Okay, everybody seems satisfied, so I'll sign those as a true record. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Likewise for the meeting of the 23rd of May 2023, circulated with the papers. Any issues of accuracy anybody would like to make? No, I shall sign those also. Is that agreed? I thank you. This evening we have no petitions, no questions from local residents or other council members. So we can actually crack on with the first item of business, which is the pay policy statement. You'll find that on page 4 of your agenda packs. And I'll ask the officer to give us just a short introduction to that, please.
So the pay policy is part of the transparency legislation under the Localism Act of 2011. All local authorities are required to update their pay policy statement on an annual basis. This has to be agreed by a member committee, then by full council before we can publish it on the council's website. The report is not proposing any recommendations or decisions other than it being noted and agreed. The format of the report is also consistent to the way the reports have been presented in previous years. The key changes in the document are on page 12, and that's all the figures for payments that we've made during 23 and 24, and that's section 3.6 of page 12. Section 4, which is on page 15, the chief exec earnings have been updated as well, and section 5 is the requirement to publish trade union facility time, and that's on page 15, and again those figures have been updated. Appendix 1G provides all the details around senior manager salaries, and those also have been updated for the last financial year. Any questions?
Councillor Cox, a question.
Yes, I note on page 15 that it gives us the total number of employees who are trade union representatives. I was then noting what Councillor Cleater said. Do we only have 2 people who are in trade and unions at all? Oh, there's... Oh, trade union
Councillor Cooper, I
representative.
think that...
Sorry,
yeah.
right, yeah,
And
okay.
then special provision is made for
Thank
them
you.
to have
Jolly
time
good.
to fulfil their duties. Okay, Councillor Mrs Cleater.
Yeah, just a question I ask every year, why are we only paying 40p a mile when the standard in local authorities is 45p a mile for mileage? Because it just means that people have to, excuse my French, faff about claiming the 5p as part of their tax thing. If we pay 40p a mile, they can claim the rest if you're paid under, but you have to mess about doing a tax application and that. Whereas if we pay 45p a mile and our staff will not be incurring huge amounts of mileage, I just wondered why we weren't mirroring what were the local authorities. I'm not suggesting we go down the NHS route who are paying 60 odd p a mile, because that does cause problems, but the HMRC rate is 45p a mile. Just asking the question. I know obviously I agree with the policy of publishing this and being transparent.
Well, we have reviewed the essential car use allowance in 2021. It was during COVID years. We reviewed it because obviously everyone was working from home, and we reviewed the mileage allowance as well. And at that kind of senior management level, it got agreed to 40p a mile. It used to be 45, but it did get down to 40p a mile, and that is to do with the cost of paying it, but from the employer. So there's a cost to the employer is the reason why it's 40p a mile.
If I could just come back on that, bearing in mind how few people we have who will be claiming this, because 45p a mile is the casual user. You don't get an essential user allowance. It's just a point I'm raising. And maybe trade union colleagues will go back and discuss that next year. But for this point, I just wondered why we were doing it, that's all. But thank you for the clarification.
Can I just come on back onto that point? The 40p a mile is for staff who get the essential car user allowance. Anyone else who claims mileage is the 45p a mile.
Right, that's a very helpful clarification, I think, so thank you for that. No other major questions. So what we're being asked to do, recommendation at the bottom of page 4, so this is for us to recommend to council to agree this, and that this report be published to the council's website. Is that after full council agree it?
So the full council agree in February. The figures in the pay policy report has to be updated with the March payroll figures. So I will update the report figures at the end of March and then publish it on the council website.
So to be clear, we are simply recommending to council to approve it. We are not agreeing to are we agreeing to prior publication? No. So it is just to recommend to full council. So we should take that out of this recommendation. Is that? I just want to be clear on this. Councillor Mrs Cleater, I think you're indicating.
Just to say, I think we should publish and we should be as open and transparent as we can be under the legislation, which this is. Because if you don't, that just feeds into the conspiracy theorists who think that everyone's on a gold-plated pension, makes loads of money, which, as we know, the majority of staff in local government don't. So I'm happy to propose that.
Right, but just to be clear on this point, we aren't. Yes, and they will be the ones that publish it, because otherwise we'd have to publish it as draft. So yeah, your motion then is this committee recommends to council to agree the proposed pay policy statement as set out at Appendix 1. Slightly different to that on the paper. So that was moved, seconded. Can I see who's in favour, please? Unanimously decided, and that will come before full council in due course. Not an entirely dissimilar item next. It's actually the workforce strategy 24 through to 29. And again, I'll ask the officer just to give some guidance here, please.
So this report is for you to agree the workforce strategy for 24 to 29. The purpose of the workforce strategy is to ensure that the council has the right level of staff numbers with appropriate capabilities and skills to deliver the services for the people of the borough. Before the strategy was created, a workshop was delivered with the senior management team to consider kind of what the current issues are and what the future issues will be and how to address them to support the strategic plan. The outcomes of that workshop identified 4 strategic themes, which are talent development, our brand and recruitment, wellbeing and reward, inclusion and belonging. And each of these themes have an action plan attached to the workforce strategy. And those are the kind of areas that we are going to be focusing on over the next few years. And the action plan will be reviewed regularly depending on the changing requirements of the organisation. The plan will be updated on those particular themes, and the workforce strategy has also been attached at the end of the report document. Any questions?
Councillors, Mrs. Cleater, please.
As you would expect. Talent and development, absolutely. We need to ensure that we have our staff trained and supported to develop, and our brand and recruitment. The one thing, especially in some of the professional roles, we really need to ensure we retain staff as well, because we do know that in certain areas have been highlighted in other reports that there is a recruitment problem, planning officers, etc. So as part of this, we need to really ensure that not only do we develop the staff and we recruit, etc., but that actually we retain our very valued staff as well.
And indeed, I think that's precisely what this strategy says. So that's, yeah. Councillor Cox.
Thank you. It's a quick one. Where do I find about health benefits? I see in here about promotion of national health and wellbeing initiatives, but what about actual health? Is it not in here at all? I was wondering is there any element of health checks before people are employed, or is that not allowed anymore?
We have occupational health who give us a report of somebody who, before they start with us, to consider kind of any adjustments that might need to be put in place depending on their health issues. We carry out wellbeing weeks on an annual basis, and as part of that we try to carry out health and wellbeing checks. So somebody will come into the organisation and carry out health checks and provide advice to the individual. So we do a whole week of events of that, and during the year we promote lots of different wellbeing initiatives to promote it, but also to give people information about where they can get more support or more advice.
But there's nothing in when we employ someone, we don't ask that they attend for like a MOT, or is that not allowed?
I wouldn't say it's not allowed. It's something, it costs. It's not a cheap thing to do. So quite a lot of this is based on what's available within the current budget within the organisation and where are the priorities. So we haven't implemented anything like that apart from doing it as part of a general wellbeing event, which is over a week within the year. So we do it as part of that. But also we have got attendance levels, and it's not well attended. So it doesn't feel through communications and through evidence from data that that's something that staff really want.
I think that's what I'm saying. That's a bit like closing the door after the horse is bolted. If there was a baseline health check that people, before we employed people, would that not then prevent long-term sickness or ailments, or are we not allowed to consider that?
Can I just, so my understanding, and tell me if this is wrong, when we have an applicant, they effectively self-declare within the application if there are health considerations, and that potentially flags seeking an opinion from our occupational health people as to whether there are any further consideration needs to be. That's how I understand it.
That's correct.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Cleater.
Yeah, and we'd also have to be very, very careful going down that route that we would actually fall foul of the Equalities Act. I have a long and enduring health condition. Actually, I've got one of the best attendance records at work. Occupational health is about supporting people to be able to do their job. Any public sector organisation, you tick your boxes and put down what you've got. If you have any long and enduring health conditions, if you need any reasonable adjustments, the word being reasonable. But if we went down that road of sending everyone to a medical, if they've got it'd be, you're right, horrendously expensive, but we would be falling foul of the Equalities Act and be done for discrimination, to be quite honest. But attendance needs to be managed in a way that you find out why people aren't attending. And a lot of times, in a lot of organisations, it's actually work pressure that is making people go off sick, not their underlying health condition, if they have one. And actually, some of the worst attendance records, not in this borough, I would say, but in employers, are what we call the Monday to Friday ones, where people have maybe been out on the lash, or their favourite football team is playing a match and, you know, they've maybe taken a day off for that. I'm not suggesting that happens at all in this council, but that's the sort of absences that usually causes more problems in an employer. But we'd have to be very, very careful that we're not discriminating against people with long and enduring health conditions, a lot of whom give a lot of service actually to employers and actually are very conscious of their health conditions and to give good service and bring that diverse workforce, and it should be encouraged. Thank you.
Seeing as we've discussed, I want to give this a different emphasis. The reason we might ask for those medical opinions is in order that we don't fall foul of it, and that we are then aware of what reasonable adjustments may be made, and that's where the emphasis should be lie, and we shouldn't shy from that because it construed as discrimination in the activity itself of seeking that information. Okay, any further comments? Okay, so the recommendations at the bottom of page 34, I've read this to myself umpteen times, and as it reads at the moment, I think we publish a draft, whereas actually what we're doing is we're going to agree this strategy and then agree that it is published. So, to make that clear from the chair, I can move that 1, we agree the strategy for 24 to 29, and 2, that it be published on the council's website. Thank you, Councillor Cox, for seconding. Those in favour, please. That's unanimously moved forwards. Thank you. Which leaves us with the small matter of agenda item 15, appointment of the Chief Officer's Appointments Panel. So we know that that's a panel drawn from members, and the recommendations are at the bottom of page 53, so that the panel be appointed to carry out the annual appraisal process for Chief Executive and Directors, and then secondly that the panel's membership be politically balanced. I think we would all support that principle here, with membership in accordance with the wishes of group leaders. So my question is, do we need to record what those wishes are? Right, okay. Mrs. Snow, would you just read the names of the people that group leaders have indicated for this panel, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The nominations are Conservative Group, 2 members, Councillor Burton and Councillor Cooper. The Liberal Democrat Group, 1 person, Councillor Nagy. Independent Group, 1 person, Councillor Cox. And the Green Independent Alliance, 1 person, Councillor J. Sams. Can I just add, though, that substitutes are allowed on the panel, and they will be, drawn from anyone that can sub.
Yeah, so the entire groups are eligible to sub, not just from this committee. Okay, so the 2 parts as per the papers, and the 3rd part being that specific list, which is the second recommendation. I move that from the chair for expediency. A seconder, please. Councillor Cox, I will just double check nobody wanted to add anything to this item before we close it off for the vote. Councillor Mrs. Cleater.
Just checking, can you read those names again? What's the gender balance on that group?
Yes, it is 4-1, male to female.
I would suggest, I'm not suggesting me, by the way, my group. I think we need a more gender balanced group for that.
So these are the nominations we've been given. I leave it to your discretion whether you support them or not, but I will move the list that we have before us to the vote, taking on board your comments. So those in favour, please. Those against? And any abstentions? There are none. Okay, so that is carried and the panel is appointed. I guess it's worth observing that it's kind of quite academic because anybody can substitute. I believe that concludes all of our business this evening. So that was short and sweet. Thank you. Seemed a shame to drag everybody here just for that, but it needed to be done. Thank you very much, and I close the meeting.